A lot of people have anxiety about regulation, and they ask me, aren't you afraid? And I do not have anxiety about regulation. When I look at this, I say, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to be worked through. FASB's working through some accounting issues, FDIC's working through some banking issues, SEC's working through some security issues, the administration's working through all their issues. But regardless of how fast that happens and how sharp that occurs, I don't think there's any outcome other than favorable for Bitcoin. And I think that what I say over and over again is, Bitcoin is the ethical safe haven for any public figure, and it is the technical safe haven for any technical company, and it is the financial safe haven for any investors. So if you have anxiety, I think that people that are thinking about this are going to realize that Bitcoin is the risk-off crypto asset network, and all of this regulation is going to create volatility, but ultimately the single number one most important issue is you walk into a room with people that have collectively 10 or 20 trillion dollars, and you tell the story, and they say, well, Bitcoin sounds better than gold, and Bitcoin sounds better than owning a big tech stock, and Bitcoin sounds like the solution to all the world's problems, and it's just so good that someone is going to take it away from me because it's too good. And what you need is this one-page memo from the White House saying, no, we're not taking it away from you. Well, and then at that point, people can start to put billions of dollars into this asset.
Sure, and I think we have someone at the SEC who is behind Bitcoin. At MIT, certainly that was the case. And the SEC has declared, as we all know, that Bitcoin is not a security. Now, Gary Gensler is talking pretty aggressively about everything else out there being a security. So I think this has elevated Bitcoin from a risk point of view, not to a lower risk. I shouldn't say elevated. It's actually lowered the risk that it's so clear Bitcoin is not a security, and everything else, at least in Chairman Gensler's eyes, is.
So the regulatory future is bright. Let's talk about economics. Look, I think economically, everything that we're seeing in the last 12 months, inflation, war in Ukraine, Russian sanctions, the Canadian trucker crisis, CPI, unexpected PPI, and anxiety about how to manage a portfolio. All of these things have been bullish for Bitcoin, and anybody that thinks about it would realize that although they're unfortunate and unpleasant for the world, they have underscored to every mainstream objective observer the use case for a global non-sovereign store of value crypto asset like Bitcoin in a way that none of Michael Saylor's talking ever would.
Yes. Michael and I had a very spirited discussion yesterday afternoon about inflation as an issue, or is it ultimately going to go away? And we don't agree on everything, but one thing that I know and that we agree on is that if inflation is an issue, clearly Bitcoin is a great hedge against inflation. When we look at the deflationary impact of the various technologies around which we have centered our research, we think longer-term deflation and creative destruction associated with disruptive innovation, that's the bigger risk. And when you think about Bitcoin in those terms, you're thinking about a hedge against counterparty risk. So if we're going to have this debt deflationary bust that some still worry about out there, you've got Bitcoin as a hedge against that. So, it's, as an investor, whenever I hear win-win, I usually don't believe it. But as it is very interesting to watch the equity markets, or the investors in equity markets, treating Bitcoin and other crypto assets like they are treating the rest of and to see the holding behavior in the Bitcoin community. I think, is it 70% of the Bitcoin outstanding, so roughly 13.5 million units of the 19 are in long-term holding hands, so more than 6 months. So the community gets it, and my fellow investors will get it with time, but in the meantime, it's going to be a very nice ride.